Curry is one of the most commonly eaten foods around the world, and depending on where you are, it can mean something entirely different. To some, it's an aromatic masterpiece, taking hours to properly cook down a delicious gravy. To others, it can be bought at a convenience store and made with water from a tea kettle. It would probably be my and my wife's chosen final meal. And our daughter will eat spicy food only if it's curry. And our littlest will get the same satisfied sigh gobbling up any curry on the planet. What are 4 curry lovers to do when they hit the bottom of the curry pot? Get out those passports and get moving. Welcome to the Curry Kingdoms, our 3-part series exploring curries across the Asian continent. We begin our story in India, the undisputed origin of the spices and techniques that are foundational to all the world's curries. We learn from a Goan woman how to make a local fish curry, along with some delicious chapati. In part 2, we fly over to Bangkok, Thailand to experience their rich cultural tradition of street food, before taking on the classic Thai green coconut curry, which turns out to be our best meal in Thailand. Then we finish in Japan, where we were surprised to learn that curry is the most popular dish in the whole country. Like, subscribe, and sit back to watch another globe-trotting foodie adventure. Here we go. Deciding where in India to tell the story of curry was difficult. In the end, we settled on Goa, on the southwestern coast, because Goa is really the origin of modern Indian curry. Portuguese explorers were obsessed with finding routes to India, having experienced Indian spices from traders coming up from the Silk Road, all the way to the westernmost point of Europe. In 1499, the Portuguese reached India. By 1510, they had conquered Goa and established it as the capital of their Indian colony, and the base where they would cultivate, transport, and sell Indian spices. With Goa then connected into the Portuguese colonies, chili peppers, tomatoes, and potatoes began to arrive from South America and the Caribbean, ingredients that would become foundational to curries all over India. The word curry comes from a combination of the Tamil word kari, which means spiced sauce, and the Portuguese word for the sauces they encountered in India, which was karil. So the English word curry is actually an evolution of that Indian-Portuguese relationship from 500 years ago. We wanted to start with the most basic inputs to curry, to see how much our daughters had picked up on watching us cook curry over the years. We had them look at 11 different raw spices and aromatics to see how many they could match up. To our disbelief, they actually knew them all.
Do they like cinnamon? Did they need cinnamon sticks?
Cinnamon.
Well, I didn't cook the curry by ourselves.
Turmeric. Which one's turmeric? Do you know? Turmeric, look. Yes, well done.
So our girls knew even more than we had realized, so it was time to get to India and start experiencing some of their curries firsthand. We arrived in Goa and spent the first couple of days acclimating to the brown fog that is perpetually over the country. We got to travel around to different parts and see the streets, the waterways, and the mangroves, as well as remnants of the Portuguese colonies that brought curry to the rest of the world. We found a woman who calls herself Spicy Mama to help us learn how to make a traditional Goan fish curry, something we had never cooked before by ourselves. She got us introduced right away to the spices we'd be using. Then we took to the kitchen. First, we got chopping up some onions, de-sliming the ladyfingers, or okra, and we got our girls peeling peas to keep their little hands busy. The base of our curry was all of the spices that we had been introduced to, thrown together with raw coconut and water into the spice grinder. This created a spiced coconut milk base that was then strained to make a thin liquid coconut milk. It pained us that all of that raw coconut was strained out, since we loved the texture. This curry had tomatoes, which are actually native to the Caribbean, and were brought over by the Portuguese during colonization and incorporated into curries over the following centuries. We made a coriander mint chutney with a bunch of fresh ingredients. Then we were on to Indian bread. Chapati, roti, and paratha are all variations of the same atta flour in layering fats into the dough. Atta flour contains wheat, soy, oats, corn, barley, beans, and millet, so it's really got a lot of foods in the flour. Spicy Mama had us make a beautiful chapati with beet juice in it that turned it this shade of pink, as well as a paratha with cilantro worked into the dough. We had such an amazing time cooking with Spicy Mama, and we were so appreciative for how involved she got our girls in the process. But when it came time to taste, we had a couple of problems. It turned out that South Indian cooking had a little bit too much salt and oil for our tastes, such that any of the nuance that we thought we were learning about the flavors just sort of melted away, with really just those two things resting on our palates.
We had worked in all these spices into our coconut milk to flavor it, strained them all out to give a rich creamy sauce to our curry, and we couldn't taste any part of it, which was really a shame. The Indian breads were pretty good though.
We also weren't too sure about a fish curry altogether. It's absolutely the staple curry of Goa, but the fish are not only full of bones, which we aren't used to, but the texture of a meaty white fish that has been cooked in a thin curry sauce didn't do it for us. The protein kind of loses its integrity and begins to fall apart. We weren't sure we would even want to attempt this at home, even with less salt and oil. Fortunately, we still had a day to get out into Goa and redeem our palates. On the way out to a coconut plantation to learn about the food grown in the area, we got to stop by the Mapusa market in town. It turns out that the British are sort of the reason that curry powders exist. They were huge fans of Indian spices and flavors, but they often struggled to replicate them when they were creating their own spice blends, which are called masalas. And so they started to create demand for pre-made curry powders so that they didn't have to deal with the spice alchemy that is Indian food. We did a quick lap to see what the market had to offer. Eventually, these women started following us and telling us about their spice shop. We all still dream about the ginger garlic masala they were selling, which had the most incredible smell. But we knew we'd be flying out of India into many other countries and would probably fail to get it home to cook with. Then we met up with an Indian man from a Goan family who's owned a coconut plantation in the area for over 100 years. Coconut is central to many Goan dishes, including the most popular fish curries like the one we'd made with Spicy Mama. He showed us how to break off the shells and get into the coconut. We were fascinated by how they use every piece of the coconut. The water is bottled, the flesh is turned into coconut milk, and the shell pieces are used to make brooms and insulation for homes. Rohan is a biochemist by trade, but has developed a unique substance called coconut protein, which he has patented and sells through doctors' offices in India as well as on Amazon in India. A 2021 study found that 8 out of 10 Indians try to limit meat in their diet, something we're really not familiar with. And 4 in 10 Indians are completely vegetarian, so they struggle to fill in the necessary protein into their diet. So that's why Rohan created this new product to inject protein into the diets of Indians who are very familiar with coconut as an ingredient source.
There's just the husk on there, okay? You just want to touch it?
Rohan and his staff prepared for us a wonderful vegetarian Goan meal that was so far beyond anything else we had tried in India over the past few days. The women that cooked it clearly knew what they were doing. We also got the opportunity to enjoy Goan food the proper way, served on a banana leaf as our plate, with spoons made of coconut shells.
It's nice. The spice level's really nice too, but yeah, so fresh, so good, so balanced, healthy, and good.
One thing we haven't really addressed was our hesitancy in coming to India at all. To be honest, we really had not heard good things from people that were from the country, had studied there, had worked there. No one could really give us an endorsement that made us feel comfortable bringing our family there. The risk of infection from all different sources, from walking on the beach to eating at what seems like a decent restaurant. We know multiple people that have lifelong illnesses as a result of visiting India. For this reason, we really stayed to our hotel more than we usually would, and that's why we sought out people like Rohan and Spicy Mama, who were so committed to making sure that we felt comfortable and safe in the country. We did not, however, feel confident in our own ability to go off to a rental home and cook ourselves without having some sort of sanitation incident. So we actually departed India before trying ourselves to make an Indian dish. We landed in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. We stayed a stone's toss from the iconic Petronas Towers, saw the sights including the famous Batu Caves, but the thing that had brought us to Kuala Lumpur was its Little India neighborhood, the center point of Malaysia's nearly 3 million Indian residents. The neighborhood is full of Indian food stores, restaurants, and clothing shops. We immediately happened upon many of the ingredients Spicy Mama had introduced us to, and that we knew we'd need to cook another Goan dish we were more familiar with. We took a stab at making a Vindaloo, one of our favorite curries and a Goan classic featuring a deep purple color from Kashmiri peppers that stands out for its vinegar base. We started whipping it together and very quickly realized we were severely lacking in equipment. It didn't take long before we called it quits and said we'd just give it a go when we returned home to our fully stocked kitchen with everything we needed.
That's what I've been preparing to cook here this whole time, a Vindaloo curry. Today I'm making it with lamb meat because, well, that's what we have. But you can make it with chicken or whatever else. You will not see us doing it with fish. We had a ton of fish curries both in Goa and in Kuala Lumpur, and honestly, none of them really struck our fancy.
This is an incredibly simple recipe that comes together quite quickly, then cooks down for a couple of hours. First, we add in all the ingredients for the curry paste, which are plentiful. As we mentioned earlier, a Kashmiri chili powder, or whole Kashmiri chilies, is what gives that purplish red color to the Vindaloo. Then, we've got coriander seeds, cumin seeds, cloves, cardamom pods, cinnamon powder, cracked black pepper, fresh ginger, an absolutely ridiculous amount of garlic cloves, palm sugar, fenugreek seeds, which you may or may not have heard of but are often essential in curry, turmeric, and almost a cup of white vinegar. Now, we first tried this in a food processor because we figured it would grind everything more finely. However, since there was a cup of thin liquid, it just sprayed right out of ours. So we always use a blender now. A proper spice grinder is probably better, but we don't have one. This makes your base curry paste. In a pan, we add some fresh-made butter, but of course it's fine from a store-bought stick. We melt it, then add in onion, ginger, and garlic until toasted and translucent. We add mustard seeds, cook a little longer, then add tomato paste. Finally, the curry paste goes in with all of those whole spices ground up. Some chicken stock goes in with some curry leaves. Add in the cubed protein, bring to a boil, and then cover with a slight vent for as long as you can bear it, usually 2 hours or until it's a nice chunky gravy. Garnish with cilantro and serve with rice and some kind of Indian bread. India was the perfect starting point to tap into the origins of curry and spice. However, our concerns over sanitation and our battle against oily and salty food definitely hampered our ability to get out and try tons of curry within the country. The banana curry from the coconut plantation was the crown culinary jewel of our experience in India, and we feel pretty confident that our Vindaloo could stand up against most others. In part 2 of our curry series, we shed all concerns about sanitation, whether rightfully or not, and we take to the streets of Bangkok, Thailand. In this part, we'll discover over 20 kinds of Thai food to orient our palates to Thai flavors in the famous night markets. Discover the extreme spice the country is known for. Then ultimately whip up a Thai curry in a well-equipped home rental where we create the most delicious and deeply flavorful Thai dish we've ever eaten, using a traditional pestle and mortar to crush together our curry paste. After Thailand, we visit Japan to learn about the much-loved curry that we hadn't even heard about until our first family trip to Japan in 2024. We eat a curry bread from a 100-year-old shop, from a plastic cup, from a powder, and then eventually make it nearly from scratch to compare all of the stages of cooking complication to see which are the most worth the time and effort. Subscribe to catch these and all of our globe-trotting foodie adventures. Thanks for watching.